70 years ago, something special started. Formula One. Man and machine in perfect unison. Pushing each other to their limits. Supported by teams aiming for that top step.
Well, the name of the game is winning.
Seeking perfection. The road hasn't always been smooth. We've marveled at great moments. Had smiles brought to our faces. Cried with our heroes. Witnessed incredible bravery. And terrible sadness. Moments never to be forgotten. For 70 years, this has been their Everest. This is what makes them special. This is the story of Formula One.
I mean, one of the things a racing driver has to contend with and deal with is fatalities, particularly if that driver is somebody who you're closer to than some of the others. And in the 70s, fatalities were a big part of Formula One. On the Friday, Barrichello had a very nasty accident in the very fast S's just before the pit straight. Luckily got away with minor injuries, but could have been killed.
It was one of those that made you wince. It was bouncing high in the air and end over end and all the rest of it. And in fact, he was hurt, but he wasn't badly hurt.
I've seen him. Yes, I saw him, and he is speaking not very well, but he's speaking.
He hit the wall. I think he just caught the very top of the last maybe row or something, you know, the last one, and then that sort of threw him like this, and it hit the wall, and then the whole side came off it, and then rolled a couple of times, but his head never had anything.
Your impression of the bad accident with Barrichello?
I can't work that way. Let me cool down.
Yeah, no problem. So there's something in your mind now that you think of this accident?
It happens to Alesi, it happens to Leto. They're very good drivers, so I'm the third one and I hope to be a good driver. So I think it's not a big problem. As long as I'm alive and I'm okay to drive again, the thing that I love most, I'm okay.
All the best wishes for you, Rubens. Thank you very much.
I suppose we'd all gotten maybe not complacent. There hadn't been a fatality in a Grand Prix or a Grand Prix weekend for quite some time. But that weekend in '94 at Imola turned that all around. The front wing assembly collapsed and fell under the nose and under the front wheels. He was powerless to control the car, hit the retaining wall on the outside, coming down to Tosa hairpin, and was killed instantly. And we were doing a live commentary at this time, and it's very difficult because you as a broadcaster, you've got to retain control, and you have to go through what can you think, what can you say. It wasn't a good scene, and we were having to commentate on the images that were being sent out via Eurosport.
That was the first fatality at a Grand Prix weekend since '82 with Gilles and then Riccardo Paletti.
I remember seeing him start that qualifying lap, and it was weird. I remember seeing him start that qualifying lap, and I didn't feel good.
It was really, really weird. Immediately the red flags come out, I just knew something was really bad, and I ran and I watched the monitors, and obviously it wasn't good.
I was out on track at the time, so as I was coming up to the accident, I could see like purple bits on the track, and our car had purple in it, so I knew straight away it was our car. And it wasn't until I turned up at the hairpin, and as I went round the hairpin, I could see him with there was a vehicle, there was a couple people just got to him, but I could see by the position of his neck, it was enough for me to think that he was gone. Yeah.
On the Saturday night, I remember speaking to Professor Watkins, who was in the same hotel, and I wanted to understand more as to why Ratzenberger had lost his life. And in the course of that conversation, he had mentioned that Senna, had been deeply upset by the fatality.
Both our drivers are quite upset. Their spirit isn't in it this afternoon. I fully support that. They're also in good condition on the grid for the race. We've done enough, so we'll support their decision not to go out.
The same at Benetton. The feeling, is the track safety good enough, do you feel?
I'm not qualified to talk about the track.
By now, most of the journalists in the press room had never been at a racetrack where someone had died, and they were fundamentally they were stunned.
The driver's briefing on Sunday morning was really emotional. Ayrton in particular. I'd met Ayrton the night before in the hotel, and he could barely speak. He was really upset about Roland, and it was awful. It was a truly awful day. Everybody was frightened. What's going to happen next?
I had the option to drive or pull out. I sat in a room with Nick, Worth, Bernie and Max, and they said, look, it's your choice. And I thought, what do I do? I've got to do this for the team, to pick them up, to keep this thing going, because you know if you're going to sit there and have a conversation with Roland, you'd be saying, what are you waiting for? Get on with it.
And then, of course, we all know what happened the following day.
We have some problems, but I think we have a good car, and I think we have a good engine too. We just have to work on these problems at this moment, which the team is doing. And for that we have some modifications here at the Imola, hoping to improve part of the difficulties we have found so far.
I wasn't at the race, so I was watching it from home. Already quite a somber feeling because of Roland Ratzenberger's death. It was then an enormous shock as we watched the events unfold during the race itself.
Senna was in the lead and was pacing the field as they went round behind the safety car following the start line accident. And the safety car on this occasion was a ludicrously slow Opel. You look at the speed they were traipsing around the circuit behind this little car, which I'm sure was being driven on the door handles, but it was so pathetically slow that all the Formula One cars were sort of struggling to run at that speed. But of course what happens is the tyres lost temperature running around behind the cars, and therefore the pressures as well, and which in effect changes the ride height.
At the restart, when Senna took the lead and Michael Schumacher was running behind him, here was the young pretender trying to dethrone the king of Formula One. And I'd done some things similar in a racing context. When you you know you're putting the car you're following under pressure, and you're putting more and more and more pressure on that driver, and he knows you're doing it. And Senna was an intelligent man, he was a highly skilled man, he was a courageous man, a proud man.
There seems no doubt at all that what happened was the car bottomed out, and he essentially, when that happened, Ayrton Senna literally had no steering, and all he could do was stand on the brakes, which he did.
My immediate reaction was, this is a big one, and then I very rapidly realised that it was a lot more than a big one by the body language and everything else that was coming out. And it was certainly the most difficult commentary job I ever had to do.
I remember standing there, and De Cesaris was in the car, and there was a TV monitor in the garage looking at the accident, and I remember standing there between the monitor and De Cesaris so that he couldn't see. Very sensitive guy, and just trying to protect him really bad.
The telltale to me that this was bad was when Senna was finally extricated from the car and taken to the helicopter. Professor Watkins didn't go with him. I think at that stage I secretly felt that we had lost the most charismatic driver of his era, the best known racing driver in the world, a man of bounding qualities and complexities and skill and aspiration, ambition, bravery, courage, did things in a racing car I'd never seen a racing driver ever do in my lifetime. A really unique man amongst a field of very special people.
I think everybody in the circuit and around the world is saddened by the harrowing events of today and this weekend. What are your feelings at this moment?
Certainly no good feelings. I mean, just win the race, but I can't feel satisfied, can't feel happy. I mean, what happened this weekend, never have seen something like this. Not just one thing, so many things. The only thing I can say about this is I hope we learn from this.
Lots of pressures came to bear, I think, on Ayrton that weekend, and he was determined. He seemed very, very determined to not back off. Or even more so, perhaps, after Roland's accident. He had an Austrian flag secreted in his oval, so he was planning to win the race and display in honour of Roland should he win the race.
I remember it was Keker Rosberg that he came and he said, "Did you hear the news? What news?" And he said, "Oh, Ayrton died." Wow, I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, just devastating. You know, the relationship I'd had with Senna. You know, I mean, I've had some brilliant highs in the sport, the highs and the lows. You know, the lows don't get much lower than that. Just a shame, devastating.
I sort of grieved in private. I always grieve in private, whether it's a friend, you know. I don't believe that
anyone could possibly think that his loss of losing his life didn't have a big negative impact on me. But I can't see why I have to demonstrate that to anybody.
There was an element, it must have been like when Jim Clark died, of if Jim Clark can die, because he's the best, anybody can die. And that's how it was for us. If Ayrton Senna, you know, can die with all of his skill and speed and talent, then we're all in trouble.
Professor Watkins told me, had the front wheel missed him when he hit the barrier and the front wheel came back into him and hit him on the helmet, had the wheel simply passed him by and not hit him, he said he didn't have a single other injury, not even a broken toe, nothing.
This is a weekend I'd for sure want to forget about. Right from the first moment with Rubens and his accident, and Roland yesterday, Ayrton today, the people in the pit lane. For me, a race you want to forget very quickly.
It was such a tragedy, obviously. From a personal point of view, I just feel very fortunate that I didn't have to be personally involved in the way that I know a lot of my previous colleagues at Williams had to do. So one of my main feelings was to feel for all of those people, particularly Patrick and Frank.
All kinds of theories were put forward, one of which, sadly for the Williams teams, was that the steering had failed. Remember, the steering column had failed, which was absolutely not the case, and was terribly upsetting to all members of the Williams team, not surprisingly.
I didn't have any doubts about doing the race. I was there to do a job, and I had communication with my engineers, and they were saying, we'd like you to, just as a precaution, not to run with the power steering. So I turned the power steering off. They didn't know what had caused this accident. They had data, they had graphs, and they had stuff they were looking back at in the garage, but they didn't actually know what had happened.
I was chief engineer of Benetton. Michael Schumacher was just behind him when he went off. First thing Michael said when he came in was, you know, we discussed it, and I'm sure I know what caused it. I'm 99% sure, and I'm sure that it's difficult to other people to understand how sure I am, because so few people ever spent their lives in a wind tunnel and know how unstable they can be and how bad they are if they're a bit too low.
Your worst fear as an engineer, honestly, and it's not so much in focus these days because the cars are so safe, but it was much more pointy back then, and people forget that. People still got injuries back then, and people died in racing cars. So as an engineer, you know, that was always in the back of your mind. That was your fear, that something that you designed might break and cause some sort of tragedy.
The changes after Imola, the right thing to have done was to say, okay, we are engineers, we are intelligent people, we do not want to suffer unnecessary fatalities or injuries. It's irresponsible to just turn a blind eye to it, so they did something about it. And Max Mosley pushed these changes through, much to everyone's frustration sometimes, but him and Charlie Whiting and Sid Watkins, they were going to get this done.
One thing you remember about Roland was his smile. He had a great smile, and he really enjoyed life. And the fact that he was a Formula One driver made him so happy.
Any surprises for you about Formula One?
No, not really. I think it lived up, or is living up to all the expectations I had. And it's definitely the best series in the world, and it's very good. I think there's not one driver down the pit lane which is a bad driver. I think it's all this year. It looks very competitive from the teams, so it's very professional, and I just love to be here.
I think James Hunt called it, you know, the dark cloud on the horizon of his sunny career. You know, it's the thing you dread, the thing you know is going to come and visit the sport at some point. You tend not to think of anyone else. You tend to think of yourself. You tend to think, well, if I get killed, I won't know anything about it. You don't think, how is that going to affect everyone that knows me and my family? And you tend not to think like that, which is an indictment of all racing drivers, perhaps.